All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Thursday. Missed the show yesterday. Did not do one. I shouldn't say missed it. We didn't do one. Had a family situation. Attended a funeral of a dear family friend. I mentioned that. Also, I did testify in support of ranked choice voting in the Maryland legislature, the House of Delegates. There was a hearing, and I actually was able to testify virtually, which was kind of cool by Zoom. Had a little bit of a technical problem. It's kind of funny, I do so much tech in my work here on Halitics, but I often am challenged, just like everybody else, when it comes to getting on Zoom calls and being heard and not muting myself and not having feedback. It's just I've got this set up the way I like it on Halitics. Took a long time. So most of the time, we do not have technical glitches, knock wood. It's been rough. It's rough to live through these times. I have to say, these are not the best times. It's hard to see the arc of history bending towards justice right now. It seems to be doing just the opposite. I do want to, as I sometimes do, describe my thumbnail, what I went with today, and it was well. I mean, I'll just put it right up there. You already saw it when we started the program, but nothing to hide. And the name of the program is not "Can We Regain the Trust?" It's "Trust No One." Actually, is the name of today's program, and the reason I went with that is because what you see as the cover there, and unfortunately, you also see a little timer, which is frustrating me. But what you see as the cover of the thumbnail is something I took. I glommed it from The Hill Rising, which I sometimes watch. I used to watch it a lot more when Brianna Joy Gray was the host. She no longer is the host on the left, but I thought she was very good. She is very good. She does a great podcast, Bad Faith, and we'll talk. We'll actually have something from Bad Faith later on in today's program, a clip, which I thought was quite interesting and frustrating for me as well to watch that clip. But Robbie, well, I wouldn't say it was Robbie Suave, but he argues that Trump and the Clintons have been completely exonerated of any wrongdoing involving Jeffrey Epstein. So rather than taking the Hill Rising's thumbnail and just repurposing it for myself, I decided I'd do my own, mainly because I don't like to, I don't want to call it plagiarizing. You're certainly allowed fair use to comment on other media. But, I just feel like that's a little bit the lazy person's way out. So instead, I created a thumbnail that's pretty similar to what the Hill was using, or the Hill used. So let me see if I can get the Hills up there, and you can see they have also nothing to hide, and similar, although they put Epstein in the middle. I put him on the top left, and smaller than Clinton and Trump, who I centered. I centered Trump because I think he should be the main focus, although sometimes on the right, you see the person first. So uh, they have Hillary on the right. Actually, have Hillary on the right as well. But nothing to hide in quotes, as though there really is nothing for them to hide. And my view is no, no, not so fast. Reason Magazine, Libertarian, Robbie Suave. There's a lot. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's all out in the open, but to claim that what we've seen to date, the release to date, answers any questions anyone might have about the role of the Clintons and Trump in the Epstein saga, that it exonerates them of wrongdoing, is preposterous. And this is just another example of media, sort of semi-credible media, right? The Hill is a reputable source, Suave libertarian, but when he was with Brianna Joy Gray, I thought she kept him kind of honest. I thought they did some pretty good work together, but he seems liberated to argue just without any shame at all, right-wing extremist talking points. And he throws a sop into them. So, oh, well, the Clintons didn't do anything wrong either. Which is, you just can't make that statement with any degree of confidence whatsoever. It's In fact, the truth is the opposite. It certainly appears that they have plenty to hide. All right, if you want to join me during this call, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I want to play the clip here. It's going to be brief so we can respond to it directly.
It should be. There's no evidence of any wrongdoing on Trump's part whatsoever. Never was to begin with. And I think that's that. Now, I don't like...
There's no evidence of any wrongdoing on Trump's part. There never was. There's no evidence of any wrongdoing on Trump's part. There never was. Over that headline, or the headline over that, I'm totally exonerated, says Trump on Epstein.
I don't like him throwing shade at the Clintons, but Clinton's trying to throw, they're trying to say it's not us, it's really them. It's neither of them. There's no evidence against the Clintons either. Nothing.
No evidence, right? That's suave. There's no evidence against either the Clintons or Trump. It's just absurd. It's just, this is, you can't, politicians lie to you. You want to believe, I think we want to believe media doesn't invariably. And maybe I'm crazy because I'm looking at YouTube videos and I shouldn't trust them as far as I can throw a piano, but we see the same dishonesty in our print media and our TV shows. Why do you think people have no faith in media? Because there's no reason to. What did he just say? He said, there's no evidence against Trump. There never was.
And on Epstein, Trump's comment to New York Magazine in 2002 stands out today. He gave that comment around the time period covered in today's indictment. The president said this, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with." It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life.
There's no way you can listen to that, watch that video, and hear the quote from Trump and say there's no evidence against him. He's talking about a pimp, right? Jeffrey Epstein, a pimp. He's talking about a child molester, a child rapist. And he's acknowledging is Trump in that video clip. Oh, he even likes them on the younger side. They're underage. Obviously that's evidence. Now, it wouldn't convict you in a court of law, but it would certainly be sufficient for a prosecutor who's investigating to have a nice long chat with Mr. Trump. Where did you get that from? Why do you say that? Why did you say he likes them on the younger side? What caused you to come to that conclusion? Obviously, there's evidence. For Suave to say, well, he's totally exonerated, that's... People say, well, Hal, you're overdoing it. Who cares? Oh, this guy, clearly he's puffing and he's just trying to promote. No, I think we have a duty to try to present things accurately, honestly. And this is just disgraceful. It's just wrong. No evidence, says Suave. Well, the Wall Street Journal said, and the Epstein files releases from the Justice Department have a headless body of what appears to be an adolescent girl based on her breast size, small breast there. This is signed the Donald. Now, I know he denies it. We don't know. Maybe he didn't. He's suing the Wall Street Journal for publishing this. So maybe he did. Of course, he's also said, I don't doodle, I don't draw, and we know he draws. So that's false. He says in there, may every day be a wonderful secret. So again, what secrets are you talking about, Trump? Maybe this doesn't convict you of anything. I get it. It's not proof, but it's evidence. It's absolute. It's an admission by a defendant. If a potential defendant, right? What secrets are you aware of? What are you privy to? Did you cover up a crime? Have you acted as an accessory at any point? there's no evidence is just absurd. And it's a big lie. It's just a big friggin' lie that there's no evidence. Of course there's evidence. I mean, I don't know where else to go with this. It's just over. And I want to outline that evidence. Because you watch that, people say, well, and I sort of did too. I'll be honest, we always thought, well, the Clintons were the ones who really have some. They were the ones who were really tight with Epstein. And they were. It's true. But so was Trump. Trump is mentioned, I believe, more times in the files. I know being mentioned doesn't mean you're guilty of a crime. But the more you're mentioned, the more smoke there is, the more likely there's fire when you're talking about a guy like Jeffrey Epstein, this spider who has this web where he said, I don't want to say ensnaring, he's got all these flies, he's got children, he's got famous people, he's collecting, he's got royalty. So you're not just innocent if you walked into that web, either eyes open or you got ensnared in it because Epstein got some of your secrets, right? Because he found something out about you he's using, or once he gets something on you because you're involved with him, he continues to leverage that. Now, I'm also, obviously, the girls who were trafficked, they are innocent. They are the victims. Trump traveled on Epstein's plane more than previously thought. Newly released. This is December 25. So past couple of months. There's a photo of the two buddies. They sure look like they're, having fun together. That's evidence. I don't care what Robbie Suave says. That's evidence. They had Trump on that Epstein plane, which, his private jet was that the Lolita Express? I heard on Breaking Points with Ryan Graham from Dropside News and Emily Jashinsky that there were two Epstein planes, and one was the Lolita Express that he used to traffic, obviously, underage girls, quote, Lolitas, unquote, and the wealthy men who exploited them, who raped them to the island, whatever, the Epstein Island. So there was that plane. Apparently there was another plane, and Grimm says it had a kind of a lewd name, lewder perhaps than Lolita Express. But I couldn't find that out. I looked for that. I couldn't find it. He said you could look it up. But Trump was on that plane, according to the prosecutors, at least 8 times, right? In 2023, 2004, that period of time. And, that's was what the prosecutors concluded. And according to the real Donald J. Trump, I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island. So real clear, nothing surfaced as far as I'm aware that he was on that island. There's no evidence of that. And same with, I don't think Clinton either. They were on his plane. He was apparently getting massages, Epstein. Maybe he was giving massages to Clinton, or one of the girls was, girl was, I don't know, but that's evidence. Trump says I was never on his plane. Well, the prosecutors say you were. They have logs that say you were on it. That's evidence. You lied. I also just highlighted that stupid because Trump is really weird with the grammar, right? With the little punctuation. Because usually if you put something in quotes, it means like other people have called it that, but you don't really think it is. But I'm not aware of people calling Epstein's island stupid, right? It's not like everyone said, oh, his stupid island. And Trump is saying it really isn't stupid. So it's a very strange use of punctuation. If you want to call it a stupid island, just say stupid island. You don't have to put it in quotes because you're not suggesting that anyone else calls it stupid. And when you put it in quotes, you're doubting that it's really stupid, the island, which I think is the opposite of what Trump is trying to do. Trump is trying to say, oh, it is a stupid island. Like we're even wasting our time with this stupid island. So the last thing you would want to do in that case is put it in quotes. All right, 240-242-5646. I would love to talk to you. Don't forget, please click subscribe now. I would love to see more subscriptions, of course, every day. I want more. Kind of like Oliver Twist, right? He wants more porridge, I believe. I want more subs, more subscribers, if you will. 240-242-5646 again. And let me see if I can find, where is my, let me just see that, check and see if we've got anybody. Yes, trust no one. There it is. It is broadcasting. Yeah, woohoo! That's always great to see. There's evidence, clearly. Trump was not exonerated. Now, why would, I mean, is there some legitimate, and neither, in my opinion, have the Clintons been. We'll talk about the Clintons in a little bit, but just focusing now on Trump. Why would Suave, like what would be the basis? Is there some legitimate reason that he could have? Can he point to some evidence that this is why I say Trump's been exonerated? Because obviously you have to have something to hang your hat on. So his argument is, well, look, Pam Bondi says she's released all the files. We've got everything. It's all out there, many, many millions and millions of pages. And there's no smoking gun. We haven't got any dirt that's, we don't have anybody saying Donald Trump raped me. We don't have anybody saying, yeah, I saw Donald Trump with this underage girl. We don't have that. We don't have a witness claiming Trump bragged about having sex with a 12-year-old, right? That would be, I guess, would not be exoneratory. If that had happened, Suave would be saying, if there was a document like that had been released, then Suave is saying, well, then we know he was guilty, but we don't have anything like that. So therefore he must be exonerated. And we know there's no such document because Bondi released all the files. The problem with that is we, don't know that all the files have been released. Many have been redacted. And the perpetrators' names were redacted, which is contrary, or the alleged perpetrators' names, which is contrary to the law that Khanna and Massey drafted and was passed, which said you can only redact victims' names for the purpose of protecting them if they don't want to be identified. That's it. That's your only excuse. So, but that said, and we know because Khanna and Massey came out, and they read some names into the record, including, I believe, the former Victoria's Secret CEO or founder. Is it Les Wexner? Is that his name? I keep thinking of that guy from, Les Wexner. And I was thinking, who's the WKRP news guy? Les Nessman. That's right. Les Nessman is not in the Epstein files, at least as far as I know. Les Wexner is. But again, all these arguments, well, there's no wrong. We just don't know if one of those or more than one statement by a witness or report by a prosecutor, investigatory conclusions did or don't include the name Trump as a conspirator or as there's, by the way, Les Nessman from WKRP in Cincinnati. He is not, I repeat, not mentioned in the Epstein files. Well, maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe that was one of Epstein's favorite programs. I'm not aware of his name being bandied about. Les Nessman. 240-242-5646 if you want to respond to what I have to say. So much of a jump, so much of a leap by Suave to say that Trump's been exonerated. There's no evidence of wrongdoing. That's what he says in his, I guess, wrap up, if you will, to the whole, his coda to the Epstein files saga. And again, maybe it's based on this statement from the BBC that Bondi released all the files, or she claims she did. But obviously Massey and Khanna are not satisfied. They note, but here is from the, that's what the BBC article reports, is that Khanna and Massey are very dissatisfied that they do not accept Bondi's statement that everything is out there, that's all on the table. But this is what BBC says. So maybe this is what Suave wrongly is basing his conclusion, that Trump's been exonerated, no evidence of wrongdoing, nothing to see here, move along. Trump, Gates, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew there, Mountbatten, Windsor, and Bill Clinton, who are included in the list, all had documented past relationships with Epstein and Maxwell. There is no suggestion that appearing in the documents implies any wrongdoing, and each has denied any involvement in Epstein's crimes. Now, I think clearly if you appear in those documents, there's an implication of wrongdoing. It doesn't mean you did wrong, but if you're in the documents, it's more likely that you did something wrong with regard to Epstein than if you're not in the documents, right? People who had nothing to do with Epstein aren't going to be mentioned in the documents. But you can see there's something really, really wrong with what the BBC says here. There is no suggestion that appearing in the documents implies any wrongdoing. Each has denied any involvement in Epstein's crimes. But we already know that Prince Andrew almost certainly did wrong, right? That he was involved in criminal behavior. One way we know that is because he settled a lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre. Another way we know that, doesn't prove it, because I know you get sued and you're like, you know what, I can't go through a trial, and you never know what the jury's going to do. They might not believe me. But there's a picture of him with her underage in a bikini at his house that looks kind of sketchy. He said it wasn't true. It was doctored. It was AI. But according to Men's Journal now, the evidence coming out from the Epstein files suggests that that was a real documenting his relationship with her. Again, he did settle for a lot of money. I mean, I think at this point you say, yeah, he did wrong. And what's even more, I believe, more relevant is that he was arrested. Over just today, The Guardian is reporting, in today's Guardian and other media outlets as well, many, of course, because this is a prince, a royal prince, was arrested because of his relationship with, based on the actions he took in his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So here you go. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who, according to the BBC, there's no suggestion of any wrongdoing in the file. Well, the fact is, if there's no suggestion of wrongdoing in the files, in the Epstein files, then that is really does not help Trump at all. Because if the files don't say Andrew did something wrong, then you can't trust the files when they don't implicate anybody or they don't implicate someone, because obviously Prince Andrew did something pretty bad enough to get arrested, and we'll get into it, or at least alleged to have done something bad enough to get arrested. We'll get into what that is in a moment. But if the argument is, well, the Epstein files don't show or don't prove wrongdoing or don't allege wrongdoing by these people, meaning Trump, Clinton, Prince Andrew and Bill Gates, then that exonerates Trump. No, because Andrew's not exonerated. He was just arrested. Why was he arrested? He was divulging state secrets to Epstein. He was telling him about government reports that he had gotten based on his work as a prince, based on his, as an agent of the British government. He, not just as a prince, but not just as a royal, but actually working for the British government. So the former prince forwarded sensitive government documents and commercial information, which includes investment opportunities in gold and uranium in Afghanistan. Well, that's illegal. And that's clearly wrongdoing. Now, if you say, well, how this is wrongdoing, not good, financial shenanigans, but Epstein's is ultimately a sex scandal. Yeah, and Andrew was involved in the sex crimes as well. So we know now that at least one of the Epstein principals in the files, Andrew, is guilty, right? Or at least he hasn't been convicted. He did settle a lawsuit for apparently millions of dollars, millions of pounds, something in that range. So that's to me pretty damning. The fact that they're going to arrest him for forwarding government secrets, my guess is the case is strong. And it's interesting, too, because according to the BBC, now this is not the BBC, this is The Guardian, but the BBC says, well, just because they're mentioned doesn't mean there's any suggestion of wrongdoing. Well, at least according to The Guardian, the Epstein file dump showed that he had forwarded this sensitive information. So actually, there is information, there is evidence in the Epstein files that implicates Andrew in crimes. I don't know how Suave can be so confident, so certain that we should just move along. There's nothing here that just says anything bad that Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump did. Can't believe this stuff. It's very, very difficult because there's no source, right, that is just wholly credible. I like to believe that I get it right much more often than I get it wrong, but I get things wrong too. I remember I at one point did play a video clip that was AI generated. I thought it was real. I think it was this clip, apparently J.D. Vance. It looked like he was saying something, but he wasn't saying it. It was bad. It was wrong. Got it wrong. So Prince Andrew, what did he do wrong? Besides forwarding sensitive information, government secrets to Prince Andrew, to Epstein. Now, Trump wasn't in power at the time that he was in his relationship with Epstein. Apparently, that had ended by the time Trump became president, 2016. Clinton was still in the White House when he flew on a number of occasions with or on Epstein's jet, apparently with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, with whom he was close, raised money from him. How did that all come about? Are we just going to say, oh, there's no wrongdoing? The way Suave says, nothing to see here. When I watch that, I have to start to get really suspicious. I have no evidence to support this, but is Suave getting money from someone to promote this idea that Trump has been exonerated, that there's nothing that implicates the most powerful people in this country in Epstein's crimes? I wonder, is he somehow compromised? Is Suave compromised either by money, by blackmail, by extortion? What's going on here? Bribes? I don't know. I have no reason to believe that. But it seems suspicious, doesn't it? At least to me. Just to me. What happened between Virginia Giuffre and Andrew? Virginia Giuffre was among the first victims to speak out, and she committed suicide. So she, ultimate victim. What happened? Well, here's what Men's Journal reported, I believe, earlier this year, right? The settlement was years ago. But this report, they kind of came out with new stuff based on the release of the Epstein documents, the dump, by the Justice Department. So again, even if BBC says, well, there's no, proof or no evidence, just because he's in the files doesn't mean he did anything wrong. He strenuously denies doing anything wrong. Just got arrested, by the way. Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit saying she'd been trafficked by Epstein and subsequently assaulted by Prince Andrew on several occasions. The case moved forward and ultimately was settled out of court. Close to £3 million. Quite a lot of money. That's a lot, right? I mean, you got to believe there was something there, right? I mean, if it's a nuisance lawsuit, maybe you settle it for $300,000. Maybe if you're Prince Andrew, you just don't want to be in the papers every single day. So you settle it. Maybe, I don't know, what seems like an amount that's just pocket change. Maybe $300,000, maybe $100,000, maybe legal fees plus another $100,000. You feel guilty. Yeah, I didn't commit a crime, but yeah, it wasn't great. I didn't treat you the way I should have. Maybe that, I could see that. But £3 million, that's a lot of money. It really is. It's a big, big amount. Not proof, but it smells funny. Suggests, does it not, that yes, Prince Andrew did something seriously wrong. Following the further release of Epstein's private emails in January of this year, evidence rose suggesting the now infamous picture of Giuffre and Prince Andrew at Ghislaine Maxwell's residence was indeed real, despite the former prince's protestations it was fake. So again, claims that, just because you're in the files, you didn't do anything wrong. And, specific mention by BBC. Well, the Prince Andrew, Presidents Clinton and Trump, and Bill Gates, they're all mentioned, but we don't know they did anything wrong. Well, we kind of sort of do, at least when it comes to Andrew. And there's evidence of the others also engaging in wrongdoing. So just don't buy these claims that Trump wasn't involved. He's not convicted. I don't think, look, it's really bad. There's more important stuff, right? War with Iran, which would be so awful. What he's already done to Venezuela. The mass thugs in the streets of our cities. Those are, if you're an American or if you're a world, you're a human being, those are ultimately worse. But there is this, clearly, there was a conspiracy of the wealthiest and most powerful people on the planet, mostly men, not in all, but almost all men, who either participated in the enslavement of women, girls, for sex trafficking, for sex purposes, the rape of girls, some as young as apparently, I've seen 12 years old. And they also were involved in controlling governments like Israel, like Ehud Barak, right? Defense Minister of Israel. Very close relationship with Epstein. U.S. power as well. Epstein files reveal scope of Ghislaine Maxwell's role in Clinton's circle. She helped advise on the kickoff of the siege at Clinton Global Initiative. Remember, when Hillary left the White House, she and Bill were broke. They owed money. That's what she said. We're $10 million in the hole. Now, apparently they're worth somewhere in the north of 100 million, I believe. So they turned that all around with their Clinton Global Initiative. And apparently $1 million in seed money from Epstein Maxwell was a big part of that. I mean, from the beginning. Why? Why would Epstein give all that money to Clintons? What did he get out of it? Apparently, Epstein liked to rub elbows, rub shoulders, with rich, powerful people, influential institutions. He would often have, big dinners, go to fancy dinners for potential donors at prestigious colleges and universities. Generally, he wouldn't give money to them. He would dangle. This is according to the New York Times. He would dangle, millions. And every now and then he would give money. Maybe there'd be the Epstein lab. Apparently, I think Ohio State got a big donation from him, other schools as well. But a lot of times he wouldn't give the money. He may or may not have had as much money as he presented himself as having. But he did give the Clintons, or Ghislaine. Now, she was from an extremely wealthy family, Maxwell Publishing. Her father, Sir Robert Maxwell, I believe, was a Fleet Street publisher, one of the tabloids there in England, made a huge pile, gave a lot to Israel, big-time Zionist. There you see Clinton with Ghislaine. They seem pretty close. It's hard to tell. There's a president. She puts her arm around him. She wants to be in the picture. You never know. But she did arrange for that $1 million apparently from Epstein to Clinton. How can Suave say there's no evidence that they're exonerated? Nobody's exonerated. Exonerated would mean there's statements in the record. This is what would it be an exculpatory, maybe? Exculpatory is evidence that you didn't commit a crime. It doesn't exonerate you. Exonerate you is like you're in a different state, right? Murder occurs. All the testimony is the murder occurred on January 2nd, 3 a.m., New York City, right? January 2nd, 3 a.m., New York City. You've got credit card receipts that show you checked into a hotel at 11:55 p.m. East Coast time in Los Angeles. There's dates stamped, video footage of you going into the hotel, security cameras with your image on it, going into that hotel in Los Angeles at 11:55 a.m. East Coast time. The murder was at 3 a.m. in New York City. There's no possible way you could have gotten from that hotel in Los Angeles to New York, right? That's exonerate. You're exonerated. You didn't do it. You clearly didn't do it. You couldn't have done it. It's hard to prove a negative. In that case, it's proven. Exculpatory evidence would be evidence, well, you checked into that hotel 8 hours before the murder. It looks like you couldn't have done it. But I don't know. You didn't find any. All the commercial jet records have been subpoenaed, and you weren't on any, plane out of LAX to JFK. But I don't know. Maybe you chartered a flight. Maybe you went under an assumed name. You can't absolutely be proven that you didn't do it. So you aren't quite exonerated in that circumstance. But it's pretty strong exculpatory evidence, right? So for me, what would be exculpatory, or what would exonerate, I believe, either Trump or Clinton or both, is if you had a statement from Epstein himself. or maybe from Maxwell. It wouldn't completely, but it'd be pretty strong, pretty close to exonerating them. If you had a statement from Epstein like, yeah, Bill and Donald, they like to hang out with me. We drink together. We sometimes, go to clubs. I've never seen one of them touch a girl. They're not interested in that, or they've told me they don't want any part of that. Over and over, and I've tried to entice them. One time I sent a 14-year-old over to Bill, and he shooed her away. He said, no. That still wouldn't quite be exculpatory or that wouldn't quite exonerate them, because why are they still hanging out with him? You can't really be exonerated if you're hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein, but at least you could say they didn't commit sex crimes, right? They weren't themselves implicated in any crime as a rapist. Now, maybe Epstein even says, yeah, I don't even talk to them about it because I got a little nervous. I got a vibe that Clinton was like trying to figure out if I'm doing something really hinky, and he didn't like it. So who knows? I mean, there could be something. There's nothing like that on the record. So the idea that this guy Suave can say, oh, they didn't do it, they got nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. It's absurd. It's such BS. And this is the kind of stuff that drives me friggin' bats, because you don't know where to go. You don't know who to trust. There's no one to trust. It's just ridiculous.
It should be. There's no evidence of any wrongdoing on Trump's part whatsoever. Never was to begin with. And I think that's that. Now, I don't like...
That's that. It's just disgraceful.
I don't like him throwing shade at the Clintons, but Clinton's trying to throw... they're trying to say, it's not us, it's really them. It's neither of them. There's no evidence against the Clintons either. Nothing.
Well, we've been through that. There's tons of evidence against both. And not proof positive, but to claim there's no evidence is just lying. Just lying. It's awful. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Just real quick. Logs that previously made public show that Epstein visited the White House a number of times during the Clinton administration, and that Clinton took 4 international trips on Epstein's private jet. Nothing to hide. Why is he visiting you? Why is he coming to the White House? There's got to be something to hide. There's just no way that could have been a totally legitimate, reasonable thing for Jeffrey Epstein to do. What, does he have kids that were hanging out with Chelsea? I mean, is that the excuse? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what plausible deniability there could be. There isn't any. Okay, I said this, it's bad. The media lies to you, it's bad. The whole Epstein scandal reveals just how corrupt, not just our government, obviously the rich and powerful around the world, what they're doing, how they abuse and misuse their power, both personal level, national level, both from having forced sex with minors, non-consensual, right? People who are below the age of consent, giving up state secrets the way Andrew did that, having multiple visits in the White House with this guy. I mean, it just all horrible. I don't know that you can say it's the same as hurtling us towards a catastrophic war, which is what Trump is doing now, but it's part and parcel of the same thing. If you're going to give somebody like Epstein so much influence over your government, then who's to say this won't happen? Now, he's dead now, so he's not the one pushing us towards the catastrophic war with Iran, but is this a wagging the dog moment? Tail wagging the dog? Is Trump just trying to avoid the negative publicity? This is from Haaretz. It's a really good opinion piece. Nothing is going to stop him. So we're sending carrier, I believe, to the Straits of Hormuz. And the analysis I think is very good because he explains, does Leifer, why, just why this is so bad. So he notes, the Trump administration has approached the precipice of war without articulating even the vaguest vision for what comes afterwards. Who will take power if Khamenei is deposed or the Revolutionary Guards are defeated? What will prevent the ethnically diverse and bitterly divided country from descending into bloody balkanization, score setting, or even civil war, thereby destabilizing an already volatile region? And we've seen these regime change operations have just gone disastrously wrong time after time after time. What happens if the regime change operation fails and Iran's current rulers emerge triumphant and emboldened? In typical fashion, Trump seems to be proceeding without much of a plan beyond bombast and the overwhelming display of power. 100%. If nothing else, this is, and I would say this would be a reason to elect Democrats, but we haven't really seen any kind of leadership from the Democrats to stop Trump, to stop this outrage. And that's pointed out as well in this article by Leifer in the Haaretz magazine, newspaper. It's newspaper, newsprint, not glossy. So let's call it a newspaper. There are no forces, domestic or international, that might act as a brake. In the U.S., media coverage has been anemic, or it's been worse. That's not even fair. They're cheerleading it. The newspapers here are cheerleading regime change. To the extent that any coverage exists, it's almost entirely devoid of discussion of the international legal ramifications and geopolitical consequences. There's so, and we talk a lot here. I talk a lot here about the ecocide, the Anthropocene age, climate catastrophe, call it what you will. This will only make it worse. Just more wanton use of every, fossil fuel generated powered engine there is in the world for this. Incredibly wasteful. The death and destruction is going to be extraordinary. There's going to be a power vacuum there. And then it's going to cost, putting aside all the carnage, all the loss of life, which is the biggest reason, obviously, we shouldn't do it. If you just care about the United States, it's going to cost us a ton of money, too, to oversee operations, to have military there. There is a little talk about the consequences of the president's unilateral decision to attack another country that's home to roughly 90 million people. The American public has been demoralized into submission by unceasing chaos at home, leaving Trump with less reason to worry about foreign policy backlash than his recent predecessors. I think that's true. The media here, far from being, weak or, not addressing what's happening, they're cheerleading it. The coverage has been on just how awful the Iranian regime is. The desire, the goal of these neoliberal media outlets is to gin up outrage at Iran in order to justify anything. Iranians mourn slain. Look at this headline here from 2 days ago, February 17th. Iranians mourn slain protesters with revolutionary rage. The authorities move to suppress shows of defiance at ceremonies commemorating 40 days since the death of protesters. I mean, can you forgive Americans who are overworked, have few media sources to say, read that and say, well, Iran's really bad. I guess we need to go to war. I guess we need to stop these the killing of protesters, revolutionary protesters. Hey, America was founded in a revolution. They just want to make their country better. We need to go in there. That's a reasonable take. If all you see is that headline, and it's something that the New York Times knew when it published it. Hey, let's get in good with Trump. You know, he's always suing us and he's always threatening us and he's this and he's that and attacking us. Well, he'll be happy with this headline. So that's where we are. Our institutions are cheerleading what will become an extraordinarily disastrous war, just as they did in the run-up to the war on Iraq, Libya. Oh, yeah, Gaddafi's going to go door to door. We don't stop him. We can see how utterly awful those wars turned out to be, how terribly destabilizing, how much harm, damage they caused. We're still paying the price for. People in that region paying a much higher price than we ever will. So yeah, this is where we are. Love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. 240, not seeing calls or really comments today, which I'm a little bit disappointed by, but so be it. I do have another story. I sort of debating whether, but I will play it. Because I thought I could save this till tomorrow, but we got a little bit of time, so I might as well. I mentioned Brianna Joy Gray. I do like Brianna Joy Gray. I think she's a good host. I think she does a lot of good coverage, a lot of good work. And I watched her interview a professor from Villanova University. It was a very long interview. I don't know if I watched all of it. Over 2 hours. But if you go to Bad Faith podcast on YouTube, you can find it just like I did. And I'm just going to select a clip from it, because I think this is so interesting and instructive. I will tell you what, let me just put myself back on before we so you don't just see BJG. Yes. So why I was so intrigued is because Gray talks about something that is so near and dear to my heart, so where I am, which is, how do we fight against the fascism, the proto-fascism, the warmongering, the neoliberalism? How do we fight against that politically when both parties are guilty, both parties are complicit? And what she has concluded, as have I, or what I've concluded, as has she, is you don't participate in helping elect the duopoly. You have to look outside. You have to go to, and she talks about a lot of different parties, not just the Green Party, but I guess there's like Claudia de la Cruz Party, People's Justice Party, maybe is called that, Party for Socialism, independents like Shama Sawant. And I'm good with that too. Although I think on the left, I want us to coalesce behind real, behind the best option. There is one in any particular race. So, for example, in the Seattle race for Congress this year, Shama Sawant is running as an independent against Democrat Adam Smith. We should all be together working to elect Shama Sawant to the extent we have the capability of doing so. Likewise, in California, we should be all rallying behind Butch Ware. In Maryland, Andy Ellis. I mean, these seem to be kind of obvious, right? Low-hanging fruit. I believe that is where Brianna Joy Gray is. She did not support Kamala Harris. And I made the argument, well, what we really need to do, again, we need to build an opposition. And the way you build an opposition is you unite together in support of an opposition. So she has this guy on from Villanova, I forget his name. And he talks a lot about, gatekeepers on the right. Sorry, people who are not real revolutionaries. They talk about Noam Chomsky, how Noam Chomsky, to a degree, did not lead the left away from the duopoly, that he acted somewhat as a sheepdog. Keep disaffected leftists in the Democratic fold, that type of role that he played. Certainly that's a role that Robert Reich plays. That's a role that Tom Hartman plays. These are not revolutionaries, but they're not even truly leftists. I don't know that I'm a revolutionary. I want significant change in our system, but I would hope it can be done within the system. This guy, this guest, who seems critical of leftists who aren't committed to true change, himself seems uncommitted to true change. So let's listen to Brianna Joy Gray here.
Issue for voters who voted for Biden in 2020 but declined to vote for Kamala Harris in 2024 was Gaza.
Yeah. So
it seems to me that when I say, or when Uncommitted says, hey, Gaza is a red line, if anything, we're trying to help you out, bro. We're trying to help the Democratic Party out.
Yeah.
I personally, that's not how I would frame it for myself, but constructively.
Right. So she's saying, I'm not trying to help the Democratic Party out. But her point is, and she's saying this, it's a very long interview and I had to, curate it a bit. But what Brianna Joy Gray is saying here is in response to a comment by the guest that he understands why Chomsky was saying you have to vote for Biden in 2020, and he might have said it in 24, because Kamala Harris, according to this guest, is just better than Trump. She's not as bad as Trump. Trump is so bad, so evil, that you hold your nose and you vote for the lesser evil. That's his argument. And, I don't completely reject that argument. And neither does Brianna Joy Gray. But she uses that argument to make a further point. And we'll hear it, but his response is so hair-pullingly frustrating and upsetting. And it really made me understand why sometimes when I have conversations with people, I get so frustrated. Here we go.
We're sending up a red flag saying it's not about how I personally am going to vote, but I'm telling you, people aren't going to vote for you regardless of how horrible Trump is and how very real the threat is. People aren't going to vote for you unless you move on this critical issue to the left. And I have a tweet from I don't know, probably 2017 or something. I think it's 2017. So it's after the election. But I was arguing with someone and they were like, don't people understand how important the Supreme Court is and these Green Party voters and da-da-da-da. And I said to them, people love to screen grab this tweet as though, one, I had a platform in 2017 and not 500 followers. And two, that I was saying something I wasn't saying. But what I was arguing was, not that the Supreme Court doesn't matter, but these arguments about the existential nature of the threat of Trump or any other Republican simply aren't persuasive. And the reason is other things are going on in people's lives. And you can.
Oh, this is so true what she's saying here. There's people who talk about the Supreme Court. And I think they're right. She's right. It's really important. But there's a focus for 100 million Americans or so on paying the rent. There's a focus on having health care. And the idea that the Democrats are going to be better for you because, they'll have the notorious RBG instead of Samuel Alito on the bench. I find that a somewhat persuasive argument, but it's a tough sell. Because Democratic Supreme Court justices have not, in recent years, made things better for Americans. They just haven't. Now, maybe because they've been outnumbered, and you can say, well, we point to Citizens United and all that. But really, her point is extremely well taken. If you don't focus on people's everyday lives, And if people's everyday lives are getting worse, they're not going to be bothered by these details that may or may not implicate their lives in the future. Now, that said, you could make the argument about Gaza. Well, Gaza doesn't really affect my affordability in my life. But to millions and millions of Americans, it was a litmus test. And we said, we're not going to vote for you if you're committed to the Israeli genocide. We're not going to vote for you. And the Democrats said, we don't care. So Brianna Joy Gray saying, in that circumstance, what are we supposed to do? Vote for the Democrats, really, under those circumstances? Why? What are we getting out of it? What would be the reason for doing that? And if we do that, how in the future do we break out of a cycle where we're getting worse and worse candidates from both parties? Seems like an extremely important question when you have to reckon with. If you're going to say vote for Kamala Harris, you have to come up with an answer to that question. Okay, vote for Kamala Harris this term to defeat Trump. But we're going to spend the next 4 years doing everything. We're going to do this, that, and the other thing. This is our master plan to take back the Democratic Party. Now, plans to take the party back have not worked. They've failed. It seems to me that hasn't worked. That strategy has been unsuccessful. This guest doesn't seem to think that.
Say that that's right or wrong, and their decision-making is wrong, and they're stupid, and they need to care about Citizens United, and blah, 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 blah. But what is obviously objectively true from watching what is happening with the electorate is that they are hearing the warnings about 2025 and saying, I don't care. You have to move on this, that, or the other for me to vote for you. And so when I'm saying this to Chomsky, when I'm saying this to anybody else, what I'm saying, like, it's not just my narcissistic project as like an online leftist that I want to win, or as a Bernie bro or whatever, that you need to move to the left. Your fate, if you care so much about all of this stuff, if you care about the existential threat of Trump, you should be moving to the left. And the fact that the Democratic Party knew that, they saw the polling, they knew what it was going to take for Kamala to win. They heard the protest about Palestine.
And they did it before.
And they still chose to lose?
Of course.
That's not...
So he's saying, of course. So this is what's so frustrating. He's like, yeah, you're right. The Democratic Party made a deliberate decision to be pro-genocide. They weren't going to take a position that would have improved the chances of them winning that election. And he's saying, yes, they did that, but you still have to vote for them. It's like, why? It's just not rational. It's irrational. And you'll hear his explanation. It's not a good answer. It's not acceptable.
But they're working for the same masters, right?
So he's saying, oh, yeah, they're working for the same masters. So basically, the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. So why are you saying to vote for them?
That's the Democratic Party. So if that's true, if everything they're saying is true, they're the same. I mean, like, they're different. Okay, Kamala's better.
In some areas, she wasn't as bad. But again, before the election, I think there was plausible arguments to make that in other areas. Certainly when it comes to Ukraine, for example, the Ukraine-Russia endless war, Trump was less bad, and probably on trade too.
They're equally committed to genocide, and they're equally committed to all of these things.
He said, yeah, they are.
No.
So vote for Democrat.
Like, what are we doing?
Well, the electoral politics in this country are captured and controlled by the capitalist ruling class, and that spectrum does not allow for a popular left position. And
that is just false, okay? For example, Bernie actually did embrace a kind of a popular left position. So what he said isn't true. That's point A. Point B is there are alternatives to the Democratic Party. You could have voted for the Green. You could have tried to build a movement to support the Green Party. And maybe you get a little bit higher percentage this term round because there are influential people like professors at Villanova University and podcasters like Brianna Joy Gray and, Hal Ginsberg, but more importantly, people like Kyle Kulinski and Breaking Points that actually have millions of subscribers, but they didn't do it, right? They didn't come around. They caped for Kamala. And you have institutions like Our Revolution and Progressive Democrats of America and Sunrise Movement who say, no, you can't vote for her. because she's pro-genocide and she's pro-ecocide. You can't vote for, and then maybe the Democrat Party says, wait a second, oh my God, we're going to lose. We're going to keep losing because we've lost the progressives. And maybe you start bringing more and more people into the green fold. Maybe you do that. That's how because his whole point is, well, we'll listen to it.
Has been foreclosed. So what we need to do is the difficult task of building real organized power on the serious left.
This is what drives me effing crazy. You say you want to build organized power on the left. Well, why don't you start doing it by promoting the alternative to the duopoly? You had that chance. You could have done that. This was an opportunity. Why didn't you do that, Professor?
A moment ago, right? The Communist Party in the 1930s was a serious power.
And look, he's even brings it up. He says, hey, back in the 30s, 90 years ago, you had an alternative, the Communist Party. Okay, well, now you got the Green Party, build it up. And if you're not going to do that, if you're going to say, well, the Green Party, I'm not serious about, what are you going to build up? What party are you going to build up? Because I didn't hear you talk about any alternative parties.
Also, at the forefront, the very vanguard of racial class struggle. They were for the liberation of Black people long before the kind of 1960s version of what's referred to as the civil rights movement or the Black. And
right, so that's
there are.
So he's saying, hey, look, the communists were committed to civil rights, to equal rights. It's a really good reason to support them in the 1930s. And they pushed Roosevelt to the left because they had millions of followers. Okay. Well, now you've got a party, the Green Party, that actually it has some very admirable views. They are committed to peace in a time of genocide and endless war. They're committed to a sustainable energy future at a time of ecocide and climate holocaust. So you do have a group of people, I acknowledge, you could say they're ragtag and they're not that many of them and they're not that organized and some of their views, their positions aren't really popular. I get all that. So build them up. Try to present them to them the arguments that you think would make them even more popular. Promote them at your university. And if you're not going to do that, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do to build an alternative? But he doesn't say it.
There have been strong socialists who have even run for president in this country. And the position that we're in is that we've really suffered from the amount of just corporate control of this duopoly. And to break out of that, we need organized politics. And so
I don't, again, this is just like a mantra, organize. How are you going to organize? You want to break out of it? You just admitted the media's against you. The parties are against you. The billionaires are in control. What are you going to change? How are you going to change it? You got nothing. You had an election in 24 where you had a third-party candidate, Jill Stein, whose position on a very, very, very important issue to tens of millions, 100 million Americans was better than either Trump's or Harris's. Why didn't you support her? Why didn't you try to build up that group, that alternative? That's the question, by the way. That is what I think Breonna Joy Gray should have asked him. But he would have said, well, they had no chance, because he does say that. They had no chance. That's what you're supposed to do then as an influencer, is give them a chance.
So much about the moment of the election or individual choices. It's much more about the collective struggle to build party structures, movements, associations, organizations that can actually shift the political spectrum. And
yeah, so that's right. And guess who could have shifted the political spectrum? The Green Party. So people say, oh, that couldn't happen. The Green Party said, no, nobody's going to vote green. Okay, maybe there's truth to that. So make the Green Party better. And if you aren't going to make the Green Party better, what's your alternative? Because the ball's in your court. What you've been doing, what you've been promoting, what you've been calling for hasn't worked. And what's so ironic about all this is this guy was on Breonna Joy Gray's program to criticize fake leftists, people who present themselves as Marxists or socialists or whatever, but really they're in it for themselves. Well, it sure sounds like that's what you are. Because you're not prepared to say, hey, we got to move away from this duopoly. It's just a complete disaster. Is that because you think you can get something out of the Democratic Party? Because I see that so often. People are like, yo, we can make the Democrat Party a little bit better. Just a little bit better. They're not as bad anyway. We can, we got to work within the existing structures. Well, if that's your attitude, then my answer is the Green Party is part of the existing structure. Because the Democrat Party is never. It just isn't going to happen. And I'm going to go back to one more point, and then I'll call it a show. For those who say, well, there's Mom Donnie. And look, I would have voted for Mom Donnie. Mom Donnie said, now's not the time. Now's not the time to primary Hakeem Jeffries. He's not going to lead us to the promised land. He ain't going to do it. Only, and you heard the guest say it, only if there's a power center to the left of the Democratic Party that's out there is there any chance of reclaiming, reforming, rehabilitating, reconstructing the Democratic Party. And if there is a true progressive alternative, true leftist alternative to the Democratic Party, then who cares about the Democratic Party? We don't need them. I'll be back tomorrow. It will be the free-for-all. Have a great afternoon. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics.